When you're die cutting, do you ever end up with these annoying lines from your plates on your die cuts? Nobody likes that. There's an easy way to fix it. There's actually a couple of easy ways. Let's take a look at them. So here's a die cut I created just several minutes ago, and I don't know if you will be able to see this, but are you able to see the little tiny lines and texture and lint fuzzies or dirt fuzzies that have come off of my plate here? This can be really frustrating when you are die cutting and wanting to create something beautiful and you keep getting these lines on your cuts. So there are several ways to overcome this. Now I'll mention this first. Sometimes you just get the lines on the back. Now most of my die cuts that I create, and I'll explain how I use my plates and how this comes about. Most of my die cuts that I create, they do end up with these lines on the back side. Now that's not a big deal for me, so I just don't worry about it most of the time as long as I don't get those lines on the front. But I do realize there are times when you need the front and back of your die cuts to be beautiful. Here's an example, okay? I wanted to use this die to create a nice border along the edge of my card fold. And to do this, I had to lay it on my plate this way with my die up here and run it through. Now with this, of course, I want the front of my card to be nice, but I also want the inside of the flap to be nice. And we'll see if you can see this one. This one got all those texture lines on it as well. So sometimes we only need to worry about the front of our die cut. Sometimes we have to worry about both the front and the back. So let's talk about how to make sure you don't get any of those lines. Now, my first and best tip is one that this is actually one of my most watched YouTube videos of all time. And it is to keep one of your cutting plates that you never cut into. So for example, I'm going to bring these two in. Oftentimes, this one looks a little more well used. This looks like my normal set here, okay? So when you're cutting, you'll have your base plates specific to your machine. And then you're going to have your bottom clear plate that you will cut into. You want to put your paper on top of that, your die, and then your top plate. And this is my top plate. I used to have these marked with some Sharpie marker, but it came off. But it's easy after you start using them to be able to tell. I can tell this is the one. It has imprints from this side of the die, but it has never actually been cut into. Doing it this way, I always have a top plate that doesn't have these annoying lines cut in it and the little paper fibers and all of that. I always have a top plate I can put on top so that when I run this through, typically these little marks don't show up on my paper after I run it through. So this is how I typically do my die cutting. The reason I started doing it this way, where I only cut into the bottom plate and I don't cut into the top plate, is because it really, really helps to prevent them from warping and ending up with those bent plates that you can't run through your machine. You can't get your dies to lay flat on them. Oh, they just drive you crazy, right? So if you want more details on that, I'm actually gonna have the video linked at the very end of this video. Stick around, I'll link to that video and you can watch it for more details on keeping your plates from warping, because there are a couple more tips I did not just mention. But if you do that, you always have a top plate that doesn't have cuts in it. Keep it on top. Most likely it is not going to leave marks on the front side of your die cut. So that is my best tip that helps with all kinds of things. It just makes life easier when your plates stay flat and you have this one that has not been cut into. Now, another tip. I have a whole collection of plates here, okay? I do lots of die cutting. I do classes. People come over and do lots of die cutting sometimes. Okay, we do lots of die cutting. I have old plates. I have new plates. And what I do is most of the time, I just mentioned this, but I use this plate. Look how many times that's been cut into. It's been cut into loads of times. It is almost still perfectly flat because of the way I use them, which is going to be shared in that other video link to at the end. So I can keep using this over and over and over again. And Same thing with my top plate. Even though it's been used a ton of times, it's fine for the most part. But I do have newer plates. Sometimes I do want a new set of plates so that I can get a pretty die cut on the front and back side. So let's say I'm going to do a card like this. I would likely pull in my newer set of plates and use one. I think this one's been cut into just a couple of times. I might use this as my bottom plate, and this one's pretty good. Use this one as my top plate. But let's say you were trying to get pretty die cuts with old and well-used plates such as this. We can do that. So this brings me to my official tip, my official solution for this problem if you have well-used plates, and that is to bring in either some copy paper, printer paper, junk mail. I save papers from kids at school, all kinds of stuff that I'm going to throw away. I save these and I use them for all sorts of things in my crafting. Or you can use some wax paper too. So here's what we do. We'll get our faceplate, and I'm going to use this nice ugly bottom plate. Going to put a piece of wax paper here. I'll put my paper over top with my die, and then the other option, you could use just wax paper, you could use just copy paper, either one. But I'm going to put this over top, and I'm going to put another ugly plate on top. Okay, this is what I did before we started. I got this die cut that had the lines all over it and the dirty paper, little tiny paper lint pieces. So let's bring in my machine. We're gonna run this through and cut it and see how this works. This is my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine from Stampin' Up. I absolutely love this machine. I used a Big Shot, several Big Shots for years and years, and this machine has worked so much better for me. It cuts perfectly almost every time, and I just absolutely love it. So since we had that extra layer, the copy paper here on top, we have a beautiful front side of our die cut. Then on the back, whatever you have laid behind there, whether it's wax paper or copy paper, it is very possibly going to be attached and stuck to your die cut on the back. I can remove this, and I will mention this, the wax paper doesn't protect it quite as well as the copy paper. So I have some little tiny lines there, not too bad, but so just a couple of options. The wax paper might work a little bit better on top if your plates aren't quite as bad, but when they get really beat up like this, the copy paper will work a little bit better. So that's an easy way to keep lines off your die cuts. I hope this is helpful. If you like tips and tricks to help you in your craft room, click on the name of my channel below. You'll go to my channel, and right there near the top is my card making tips and tricks playlist. You can hopefully learn all kinds of things there. If you're new here, I hope you subscribe. Please send me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this video and what you'd like to see in the future. I hope you have a blessed day, and I will see you again next time when I'll be here helping you to hand make with love.